Have you ever heard of the real Lion King? Not Simba, not the animated tale of a lion cub who takes back his kingdom, but the legend of a boy born crippled, destined to become the founder of one of the greatest empires in African history. This is the story of Sundiata Keita, the warrior king, the exile turned emperor, the Lion of Mali. Before there was Disney, before there were Broadway musicals and box office hits, there was the epic of Sundiata, passed down by generations of griots, the traditional West African storytellers who preserved history not with books, but with memory, song, and rhythm. This is not just a story. It's a legend, rooted in truth and wrapped in myth. It's a tale of prophecy, jealousy, perseverance, exile, and ultimate triumph. And it's one of Africa's greatest untold epics. Let's rewind the clock back to the 13th century, to a time when the drums of Mandé echoed across vast plains, when gold flowed through the Sahel, and when empires rose from the dust of legends. Welcome to the Mali Empire. The Mali Empire, which reached its peak under Sundiata's successors, especially the famous Mansa Musa, was one of the wealthiest and most powerful empires of the medieval world. At its height, it stretched from the Atlantic coast deep into the heart of the continent, encompassing modern-day Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Niger, Nigeria, and beyond. This empire wasn't built on brute strength alone. It was shaped by culture, religion, diplomacy, and trade. Timbuktu, one of its cities, would become a beacon of knowledge, home to scholars and libraries when much of Europe was still emerging from the Dark Ages. But it all started with a boy who couldn't walk. Sundiata's life begins not with a crown or an army, but with a prophecy, delivered by a mystical hunter-seer, predicting that a child born to an unlikely mother would rise to unite the Mandinka people and forge a mighty empire. His early life, however, seemed to contradict that prophecy. Born weak and unable to walk, Sundiata became the subject of ridicule. His stepmother schemed against him, his family was forced into exile, and his destiny seemed shattered. But fate is not easily denied. Through hardship, he grew stronger. In foreign courts, he learned the art of kingship and war. And when tyranny came to the land of Mali in the form of the sorcerer king Suma Orokante, it was Sundiata who answered the call. With wisdom, courage, and the support of his people, he returned to claim what was rightfully his. This is a tale that resonates with anyone who has ever faced adversity. It's a story of rising from nothing, of believing in a destiny that others mock, of forging greatness through perseverance. And it's our story to tell today. So why does this story matter? Because Sundiata's journey is more than a historical anecdote. It's a mirror of what Africa was and still is. It challenges the tired narrative that Africa was a continent without history. It reminds us that heroism doesn't always come in the form we expect, that the greatest of kings may begin as the most broken of boys. In a world hungry for authentic stories, the real Lion King is one of the richest epics waiting to be rediscovered. Now sit back, open your heart, and listen closely. As the griots once said, listen, you who love history, I will tell you of Sundiata, the son of the buffalo woman. Let the legend begin. Before Sundiata was born, before the Mali Empire ever rose to greatness, a prophecy was spoken, not by a king or a warrior, but by a hunter, a seer, a mystic who could read the future in the bones of the earth and the rhythms of the trees. This is where our story truly begins. In the ancient city of Niani, nestled near the Sankarani River, there ruled a man named Magan Konfata. He was a Mandinka king, wise, respected, and deeply loved by his people. But one shadow loomed over his reign. He had no heir strong enough to inherit his legacy. He had a wife, Sasuma Berete, and a son named Dankaran Tuman. But many whispered that this son lacked the strength and spirit to be a true king. Then one day, two traveling hunters arrived at Magan Konfata's court. They weren't ordinary men. They were seers, and they had come from the forest bearing not only wild game, but a message. Hunter-seer, speaking slowly. King of Mali, the spirits have spoken. You will marry a woman of strange appearance, ugly to the eye but mighty in destiny. From your union will be born a lion, a king among kings. At first, the court laughed. An ugly woman? The king was confused but intrigued. He asked the hunters to bring this woman to him, and so they did. Her name was Sogolan Keju. She was no ordinary woman. She had the hunch of a buffalo, thick lips, coarse hair, and a gait like no other. But her eyes shimmered with something deeper, something ancient. The griots say she was the human incarnation of a buffalo spirit, a being of immense power from the bush. Though mocked by the courtiers and rejected by the other wives, Sogolan was chosen by Magan Konfata, not for her beauty, but for the power she carried within her. The prophecy had spoken, and so the king made her his wife, Sundiata's birth. Not long after, Sogolan gave birth to a son. His name was Sogolan Jada. Jada, shortened from Jada, meaning lion. Over time, the name would evolve, Sundiata, the lion child. But this lion was born with a shadow. Sundiata could not walk. His legs were twisted, his body weak. He crawled on all fours even as other children ran through the palace. The same courtiers who once mocked his mother now mocked him. His stepmother, Sasuma Barate, saw him as a threat to her own son's path to the throne. She whispered poison into the ears of nobles. This is the child of prophecy? This crawling boy? How can a cripple become king? But Sogolan believed in her son. She nurtured him, protected him, told him stories of buffalo spirits and royal destinies. She reminded him daily, "You are born of kings. One day you will rise." Sundiata, even as a boy, listened more than he spoke. He studied the world. He learned from the griots, the smiths, the hunters. Though he couldn't stand, he soaked up wisdom like the parched earth absorbs rain. But the court grew restless. King Magan Konfata aged, and eventually he passed away, leaving a fragile throne behind. The rise of Sasuma. With the king gone, Sasuma Barate wasted no time. She had her son, Dankaran Tuman, declared king. The elders hesitated. They remembered the prophecy, but Sasuma silenced them with fear and favors. Sogolan and Sundiata found themselves pushed aside. The once honored queen became an outcast, and her son a ghost in the palace halls. But the wheels of destiny were already turning. The prophecy could not be undone. Prophecies in African epics are not just predictions. They are truths waiting to unfold, unshaken by doubt, delayed but never denied. Sundiata's story was only beginning. In the heart of the Mandinka kingdom, in a royal court once filled with hopes of prophecy, sat a young boy who could not walk. They called him cursed. They said the hunter-seers were wrong. They laughed and whispered, "The lion of Mali?" More like a broken cub. But what they didn't know was this. Even lions crawl before they learn to hunt. Sasuma's jealousy. With King Magan Konfata gone, the palace belonged to Sasuma Barate. Her son, Dankaran Tuman, now wore the crown, and she ruled through him with iron will. Yet even as queen mother, she remained haunted by prophecy, by paranoia, and most of all, by Sundiata. She feared the quiet strength in Sogolan's eyes. She feared the boy who, though crippled, carried an unshakable stillness, like the calm before a storm. And so she schemed. She mocked Sogolan publicly. She ordered servants to deny her food. She spread rumors of witchcraft, calling Sogolan and her children cursed. Every day Sundiata watched as his mother was humiliated. Every day he clenched his fists, trying to understand why his legs would not obey him. But his spirit, it never bowed. Sundiata's struggle. As a child, Sundiata was surrounded by strength, hunters, warriors, dancers. And yet his body betrayed him. He could not walk. He could not stand. Other boys mocked him, but Sundiata was not like other children. He listened. He learned. He observed the rhythm of the court, the pride of the griots, the rituals of the blacksmiths, the strength of his mother. Even in pain, he was learning how to become a king. His mother never lost faith. She reminded him, the tree does not rush to grow, but when it does, it towers above the grass. And then one day, everything changed. The iron rod moment, she had just been insulted again, this time by Sasuma's guards, denied food, spat upon. Sundiata looked at his mother, tears in her eyes, shoulders shaking with silent grief. And something snapped inside him. He spoke, not with anger, but with power. "Mother, today, I will walk." The palace laughed when they heard. The cripple walk? They gathered to watch what they thought would be humiliation. But Sundiata had been preparing. He summoned the royal blacksmith. He asked for an iron rod, strong, thick, unyielding. Sundiata stood before the court, trembling. He placed the rod before him. His hands gripped it. His arms shook, muscles strained. The earth seemed to pause. Then, with a cry that echoed across the hills, he rose, first to his knees, then to his feet. One step, then another. The rod bent under his weight. But he walked. He walked. The prophecy had awakened. The griots still sing of that day, the day the lion stood, the day the crippled prince found his legs and began his journey to destiny. From that moment on, Sundiata was no longer a joke. He was a threat, and Sasuma knew it. Every hero must leave home to become who they are meant to be. For Sundiata, exile was not a punishment. It was a forge, a crucible that would shape a boy into a king. After Sundiata stood and walked, he gained the respect of many. Warriors nodded when he passed. Elders praised his strength. The people began to whisper, "Could he be the lion of the prophecy after all?" But in the palace, fear festered. Sasuma Barate had not spent years securing the throne for her son, only to lose it to Sogalan's child. So she made her move. Whispers became threats. Assassins lurked in shadows. Food was poisoned. Doors were barred. And so Sogalan made a decision. In the dark of night, with Sundiata, his siblings, and a handful of loyal servants, she fled. They left Niani behind, the only home they'd ever known. They crossed rivers and forests, deserts and towns, always watching, always running. But with every step, Sundiata grew stronger, not just in body but in mind and spirit. They wandered for years, but these were not wasted years. They were the making of a king. Lessons in kingship, Sundiata's journey took him across West Africa, from Ouagadougou to Mima, to the courts of kings and sultans. In each new land, he learned something vital. In Taban, he learned diplomacy. In Jadeba, he studied law and governance under wise rulers. In Mima, he found refuge and mentorship. "You're not just a prince in hiding," the king told him. "You're a future ruler. Watch, listen, learn." And he did. Sundiata watched how armies were trained, how alliances were forged, how justice was administered. He learned that a king is not just a warrior, but a servant to his people. In exile, he gathered a following, not through bloodlines or inheritance, but through respect, through character. Warriors, exiles, merchants, and sages gravitated to him. He began to train in the art of war. He mastered the bow, the spear, the tactics of desert warfare. And in time, he became more than a prince. He became a leader. But far from him, back in Mali, darkness had fallen. While Sundiata was in exile, a new tyrant rose from the north. His name was Soumaoro Kante, the sorcerer king of the Soso. Soumaoro was no ordinary man. The griots say he could vanish into smoke, summon spirits, and speak with the dead. His enemies said he had a room full of human skulls, each one the head of a defeated king. And now, he had his eyes on Mali. Dankaran Tuman, the puppet king, was powerless. The people cried out as villages were burned, women taken, children enslaved. Soumaoro swept through the Mandinka lands like a plague. He sacked cities. He killed griots who dared sing against him. He declared himself the one true king of all Mandi. But the Mandinka elders remembered something else. A boy who once stood with an iron rod. A lion who had vanished, but might return. The messengers traveled far and wide, across rivers, forests, and deserts, searching for Sundiata. When they found him in Mima, he was no longer the boy they remembered. He was tall, broad-shouldered, eyes sharp with wisdom. They knelt before him. "Your people suffer. The tyrant rules. The land cries out for its true king." Sundiata was silent. Then he rose. He looked to the horizon and saw not just the road home, but the road to destiny. He did not ride alone. With him came his brothers, his childhood friend Manding Bori, warriors from Mima, smiths from Jadeba, hunters from the south, and even griots who had risked everything to preserve the truth. He did not return as a prince in hiding. He returned as a lion answering the call of fate. Exile breaks some men, but for others it reveals their strength. Sundiata's years in the wilderness were not lost time. They were divine preparation. And now the hunter would return home, not with whispers or prophecy, but with an army and a roaring spirit. The time had come to face the sorcerer, to reclaim the land, to fulfill the prophecy. The lion had returned. But to reclaim his land, Sundiata would have to face a force unlike any other. Sumaoro Kante, the sorcerer king of Soso, a tyrant wrapped in shadows, a man of dark magic, feared across the lands of West Africa. The fate of Mali and of the Mandinka people rested on the outcome of one battle, the Battle of Kirina. When Sundiata returned from exile, he returned with purpose and with power. By now he was not just a prince, he was a general, a warrior, a legend in the making. His call for war spread like fire through the savanna. Mandinka villages, long oppressed by Sumaoro, rose in defiance. Former kings, driven from their thrones, pledged their banners to Sundiata. Old enemies became new allies. In a matter of months, he had assembled an army the likes of which had not been seen in generations. Warriors from the forests, archers from the Sahel, blacksmiths turned spearmen, hunters, horsemen, and griots, all united under one banner. And beside Sundiata stood his most trusted companion, Manding Bori, his blood brother. The griots say they were like two halves of the same soul. Sundiata the lion, Bori the spear. Their bond was unbreakable. But across the plains, beyond the mountains, in the iron fortress of Soso, Sumaoro was watching. He was no ordinary king. Sumaoro could not be killed by sword or arrow. He wore armor made of human skin. He traveled with a legion of ghost warriors, and his name alone was enough to silence villages. Scene, a dark room lit only by fire. Sumaoro chants in a forgotten tongue. The griots tell us that he had a chamber of magic objects, fetishes, skulls, enchanted drums, charms made from the bones of his enemies. He rode a black horse with red eyes. He could appear and disappear at will. Arrows bounced off his body like rain. He was a living nightmare. And now he knew that Sundiata was coming, but he did not fear him. Not yet. The armies met near a place called Kirina. The plains stretched wide, dusty, and dry, perfect for battle. Both sides numbered in the tens of thousands. On one side, Sumaoro's terrifying host, his own Soso warriors, dark mages, and enslaved archers. On the other, the Mandinka alliance, warriors of courage, sharpened by exile and bound by honor. The first clash was brutal. Sumaoro unleashed terror on the battlefield. Phantom beasts, magical fire, spells that turned men mad. Sundiata's warriors were shaken, but not broken. He rallied them with words. Do not fear the shadows. We are the sons of the savanna. We are the children of the lion. Fight for your mothers, your ancestors, your land. They charged with fury, and the savanna shook with the cry of war. Still, they could not touch Sumaoro. He rode through battle like a ghost, cutting down men with a blade that never dulled. Each night, Sundiata gathered his griots and strategists, asking not how to defeat his army, but how to destroy him. One night, an old blacksmith came to Sundiata's camp. He was bent with age, but wise in the ways of magic and steel. He said, Sumaoro's body is protected. His flesh is covered in spells, but every spell has its flaw. He told Sundiata of a secret weakness. Behind Sumaoro's heel was a talisman, a small black feather tied to his ankle. That feather was the source of his power. Remove it, and the sorcerer would bleed like any man. Sundiata smiled. The next day, he called for his best archer. He gave him a special arrow, carved from the wood of the baobab, tipped with the spur of a rooster, and blessed by the griots with the words of the ancestors. He said, when you see the black feather, aim true. The two armies met again at Kirina. This time, Sundiata led from the front. He wore golden armor. His banner showed a roaring lion. His voice thundered across the battlefield. This land is ours. This freedom is ours. Today, the darkness ends. They clashed, sword against spell, courage against curse. In the chaos, Sumaoro appeared, black horse, red eyes, scimitar in hand. But this time, Sundiata was waiting. He called to his archer. The man climbed a hill, took aim, and fired. The arrow sliced through the wind. It struck behind Sumauro's heel, straight through the feather. The tyrant screamed. The magic shattered. The sorcerer fled, disappearing into the mountains. Some say he turned into smoke. Others say he was swallowed by the earth. But what matters is this: he never returned. With their leader gone, the Sasso army crumbled. Sundiata's warriors roared in victory. The Battle of Karina was over. Sundiata did not just win a war, he united a people. He called a great assembly of chiefs, griots, blacksmiths, and nobles at a place called Kangaba. There, they declared a new code of honor, justice, and kinship. The Mandan Charter, one of the oldest constitutions in the world, and they crowned him the Lion King, a crippled boy, an exiled prince, a warrior of destiny. At Karina, Sundiata Keita fulfilled the prophecy and gave birth to an empire that would shine for centuries. But his story does not end in war. It continues in the golden age of Mali. From the ashes of war rose something greater than victory, an empire, a legacy, Mali. Under the leadership of Sundiata Keita, the Lion King, West Africa entered a golden age, an era of wealth, wisdom, and wonder that would echo through the ages. After the Battle of Karina, Sundiata didn't just celebrate, he got to work. He united the 12 kingdoms of Mande, each with its own customs, languages, and beliefs. But Sundiata knew something powerful. Unity is not about sameness, it's about respect, justice, and common purpose. So he called a great council at Kangaba, where the leaders of the Mandinka people gathered. Together they forged the Kurukan Fuga, or the Mandan Charter, a declaration of human rights and governance older than even the Magna Carta. It stated, all people have a right to life and freedom. The weak should be protected by the strong. The land belongs to the people. Slavery should not be practiced among the Mandinka. This was not just the birth of a government, it was the foundation of a civilization. Sundiata appointed governors, created a structured taxation system, and formed a standing army. He respected local customs, but demanded loyalty to the empire. Trade routes flourished, roads were protected, markets expanded, and at the heart of it all, Niani, the capital city, rebuilt under Sundiata's rule, now a beacon of culture and commerce. The lion had built a kingdom not just with war, but with wisdom. Timbuktu and the flame of knowledge under Sundiata's successors, especially his nephew Mansa Musa. Mali became the jewel of West Africa, and at the center of that jewel was Timbuktu. Originally a small trading post, Timbuktu exploded in size and importance as a center of learning, religion, and culture. Mansa Musa, famed for his legendary pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, brought back architects, scholars, and books. He built mosques, libraries, and universities that would draw minds from across the Islamic world. At its peak, the University of Sankore in Timbuktu held hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, covering mathematics, astronomy, law, poetry, philosophy, medicine, and more. Students came from Cairo, Fez, and even Europe to study in Mali. The griots tell us, gold was everywhere in Mali, but knowledge? That was the true treasure. Timbuktu's flame of wisdom would burn for centuries, lighting up Africa's legacy of intellectual greatness. Mansa Musa, the Golden King. While Sundiata laid the foundation, it was Mansa Musa, the 10th emperor of Mali, who brought it to global fame. In the 14th century, his pilgrimage to Mecca was so grand, so lavish that it shook the economies of the cities he passed through. He gave away so much gold in Cairo that it caused inflation for over a decade. The world took notice. Mali appeared on European maps. Arab historians called it one of the richest empires of the era. But wealth alone wasn't what made Mansa Musa legendary. It was his devotion to education, religion, and justice. He preserved Sundiata's dream and expanded it into a civilization that rivaled any on earth. The legacy of Sundiata, Keita. So what happened to Sundiata? After establishing peace and prosperity, the Lion King ruled wisely for many years. The griots say he disappeared mysteriously. Some say he drowned in the Sankarani River, others that he ascended into the spirit world. His tomb has never been found. But his legacy? It lives in every story, every song, every drumbeat of West Africa. He turned division into unity, exile into empire, prophecy into reality. The griots still sing his name in the epic of Sundiata, one of the oldest oral histories in the world, passed down from mouth to mouth, heart to heart. To this day, the Mandinka people honor him as a father, a hero, and a guide. His story is not just about kings and kingdoms. It's about resilience, about rising after the fall, about how greatness can come from the unlikeliest places. In the golden light of Mali's empire, knowledge flourished, trade boomed, and people dreamed freely. All because a crippled boy once said to his mother, "Today I will walk." When most people hear the Lion King, they think of Simba, the animated prince who loses his father, goes into exile, and returns to reclaim his throne. It's a story of courage, legacy, and destiny. But long before Disney's version, long before Broadway lights or Hollywood screens, there was another lion, a real one, Sundiata Keita, the original Lion King of Mali. His life was not fantasy. It was legend rooted in truth. His journey from a disabled child to the founder of one of the greatest empires in African history isn't just a heroic tale. It's a testament to the power of resilience, community, and belief in one's destiny. He didn't have talking animals or comic relief sidekicks. What he had was far more powerful. A mother who believed in him before the world did. A people crying out for freedom. A destiny bigger than himself. And through pain, exile, and war, Sundiata fulfilled that destiny, not for his own glory, but for the generations to come. A legacy larger than life. His Mali empire thrived for centuries. Its cities lit up the map of medieval Africa. Its scholars preserved knowledge that would shape the world. Its gold-funded trade networks that stretched across continents. Even long after Sundiata's death, his name carried weight, not just as a king, but as a symbol of what Africa was and what it can be again. Why this story matters. In a world where African history is too often overlooked, forgotten, or misrepresented, Sundiata's story is a beacon. It reminds us that Africa has always had heroes, always had empires, always had greatness. This is not just a story about the past, it's a story for the future. For young people who are told they'll never rise. For dreamers who feel left behind. For anyone who's ever faced impossible odds. Remember, the boy who couldn't walk became the Lion King. So the next time someone asks you about the Lion King, tell them about Sundiata Keita, the real one. If you were inspired by this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us which African legend we should cover next. Let's keep these powerful stories alive. Let's keep the legacy roaring.